What is habeas corpus, and to what extent, if any, is it essential to the principle of limited government? How has the writ of habeas corpus evolved in the United States? Under what circumstances, if any, might the writ of habeas corpus place an unreasonable burden on government? You can begin when ready.
Thomas Jefferson declared the protections provided by habeas corpus as the essential principles of our government. The writ of habeas corpus requires the government to provide a valid reason for imprisonment and guarantees that the accused will be given a trial, thus protecting against unlawful and potentially indefinite imprisonment. The Habeas Corpus Act of 1679 was created under the backdrop of a monarchy that was continually abusing its power through indefinite imprisonments.
An increase in wrongful detainments, along with Parliament's passing of the Intolerable Acts, caused the colonists to become enraged, and thus the Revolution was born. During the Revolution, early state constitutions emphasized the protection of habeas corpus, such as in Section 7 of the Massachusetts State Constitution.
Moreover, Alexander Hamilton wrote in Federalist Paper No. 84, the establishment of the writ of habeas corpus, the prohibition of ex post facto laws, are greater securities to liberty and republicanism than the Constitution contains. Hamilton observed the depth of impact habeas corpus had on limited government and democracy following its establishment in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. Habeas corpus was, at the time of founding, valued enough to be included in the original text of the Constitution because it is the mode by which the judicial power protects personal liberties and repels the injustice of despotic governments.
In this, the fundamental idea of habeas corpus limits government power and has for the duration of the United States. From the Judiciary Act of 1789, establishing the authority to issue habeas corpus to prisoners, to the more recent Atkins v. Virginia case of 2002, outlawing the execution of people with intellectual disabilities, habeas corpus has continually checked the governmental overstep and contributed to the limited government that ensures freedom and equality within the democracy.
Over time, the writ of habeas corpus has been used to prevent unlawful detention. During the American Civil War, President Lincoln suspended habeas corpus for suspected Confederacy conspirators in the North, as well as Baltimore officials. Chief Justice Taney challenged President Lincoln in ex parte Merriman, as judge agreed with Taney and ruled that only Congress could suspend habeas corpus. The suspension of any right or freedom granted by the U.S. Constitution should only be carried out in the face of dire and unanticipated circumstances. This unit collectively agrees that the suspension of the habeas corpus is valid during a time where Congress has declared war, a case of rebellion, or an invasion of public safety. President Lincoln's suspension of habeas corpus lifted the unreasonable burden of federal courts being overwhelmed with the consideration of additional evidence from military service members.
Additionally, the burden of widespread fraud is avoided. The Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996, with its one-year statute of limitations on filing habeas corpus, has caused numerous court cases over holding suspected terrorists in Guantanamo Bay.
However, this unit believes that the federal government has extended the suspension of habeas corpus too far, and there is no unreasonable burden during the global war on terror. In the 4 Guantanamo Bay cases, the alleged enemy combatants challenged their detention by the government. In cases like Rasul v. Bush 2004, the Supreme Court decided in favor of the detainees.
The court preserved the separation of powers, overturning laws passed by Congress and mandates proposed by the president aimed at denying the prisoners their right to habeas corpus. Later, Congress passed the Detainee Treatment Act of 2005 and the Military Commissions Act of 2006 that eliminated rights for enemy combatants, thus leading to a statement by Justice Anthony Kennedy in 2008, fourth and final case, Budeman v. Bush. The laws and Constitution are designed to survive and remain in force in extraordinary times. While this includes the war on terror, there has been a continual failure at the hands of the federal government to execute judicial branch orders regarding habeas corpus. Thank you, and we are now ready for your questions.
All right, thank you. So let's bring it to the contemporary world. Do you see any habeas corpus concerns, issues, or analysis to be done in the current situation about immigration and asylum seekers across our southern border?
Currently, with regards to people seeking asylum in the face of COVID-19, there are many cases in which people have been refused the right to habeas corpus petitions when they are medically vulnerable to COVID-19 in a place of detainment after crossing the border.
Do those folks who are coming into our country, do they have the right to habeas corpus?
That's up for debate because within our Constitution, when we talk about the right to habeas corpus, we don't really make it clear whether it applies to all people or just citizens of the nation. And there are varying interpretations of this, and it's been up for debate within our government for years now.
However, oh, sorry, Ava, you can go.
Additionally, in the 14th Amendment, all people are given the rights to life, liberty, and property, and as well as in the case of Fournier Ting versus the United States, they give immigrants all rights, the same rights that citizens have as well.
Great, thank you.
However, in
What?
the case of Al-Khalid v. Trump in 2020, it was determined that due process and habeas corpus do not apply to people that do not have property or property in the sovereign United States.
I want to take us back a little bit more into history. I live in the great state of Illinois. You ladies live in the birthplace, land of Lincoln. You ladies live in the birthplace of Lincoln. And I agree with you that you said the panel thought that he was justified in suspending it given the crisis. Well, what about another time in World War II when FDR suspended the writ with the internment of the Japanese? Kind of a similar thing, maybe. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on FDR's actions.
I think for similar reasons as to, I think he was justified in doing this for similar reasons as to Lincoln, because this state was in like mass panic over World War II, and especially in regards to the Japanese. However, I don't necessarily believe that we should have gone as far as the internment camps, but I do understand where he was coming from, if that makes sense.
The martial law that was suspended in Hawaii was far too much. It completely took away life and liberty from the Japanese when they were put into the intermittent camps from the War Relocation Authority.
This idea of suspending habeas corpus in an executive power in the state of war can be dated back all the way to as early as 1793 with William Pitt and the French Revolution. And in that time, those unanticipated circumstances, as we discussed in our opening statement, there is lots of debate as to whether or not the executive branch can or cannot extend or suspend the right of habeas corpus. As we discussed as well in our opening statement, the right of suspension of habeas corpus must fall in the hands of Congress and not the executive branch.
You did a nice job overviewing the chronology and evolution of habeas corpus from the outset. In your research, what are your views on the impact on state governments, state courts, state incarcerations of habeas corpus? Has it impacted at that level, having started as a federal issue, do you think?
It definitely has. You can see statements of habeas corpus and ideas of habeas corpus in many of the state constitutions, such as Article 1, Section 14 of the Pennsylvania State Constitution, in which states feel it is necessary for them to acknowledge the ideas of habeas corpus as well as the federal government.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Do you think the suspension clause, Article 1, Section 9, is the language there too vague? You know, it's like war and rebellion. Is that too squishy? Should we firm that up, or do you think that's adequate?
I believe that it should be more specific, because when you look at war, it should be the Article 1, Section 8, Congress's power to declare war physically, because the war on terror, that's too far. That's not a physical war.
Although I agree with my colleague, I definitely think the part about public safety and how it should be able to be suspended just in cases of public safety should just stay, because there's many cases such as COVID-19 being debated as a public safety issue that we can suspend habeas corpus. And that really should just stay, because we can't predict what will happen.
Well,
But I do agree with my colleague.
Yeah, well, what about the recent protests, what we've seen, Black Lives Matter and other protests over the last year or two? Do you think it's appropriate for those to be deemed as sort of public safety crises that crack down on people who are just peaceably assembling?
For example, in the NYPD suspended habeas corpus after Floyd protests, and shortly after, Senator Deputy Leader Michael Gianaris undid that through legislation, because it's not okay, because we have a First Amendment right to protest.
And just because some the protests are getting more violent doesn't mean that all protests need to be stopped and the whole right of habeas corpus needs to be revoked in places, or suspended in places, I should say, just because of the actions of a few, and that might not necessarily represent the whole movement as a whole.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you.
What about, I don't know if we have time to get this last one in, but what about like a broader issue, like not a couple violent protesters, but a public health pandemic? Even if we're peacefully assembling, we could be spreading the pandemic further. Does that change the equation at all?
Well, the Supreme Court has
Time.
Yeah, I threw that in there. You can finish your thought if you'd like.
well, the Supreme Court has ruled on COVID-19, such as in the case of Wilson v. Williams, where they declared that habeas corpus, they did not allow habeas corpus jurisdiction for those that were medically vulnerable to COVID-19. So as it is a changing pandemic, and as these situations are changing, it is something that has to be considered.
Right.
All right,
Right.
very good.
Very good.
Good job, good job. Well, we missed that round of applause that you deserve when we're doing it in the Zoom world. Thank you very much. I really appreciate clearly the hard work that you've put into this to get ready for this level. You're very well prepared. I liked your prepared response, particularly recognizing that this idea is just deeply embedded in our history, right? Our English roots, our early state constitutions. Naturally, it's in the Constitution, right? It's not even a question. And it's so vitally important, as you say, as a check against potentially tyrannical government. And that challenge, that's why I brought my question in about BLM and all that, it's still with us, right? All these years later, 225 years later, we're still grappling as a society with what is the right amount of power that we want our government to have to keep us all safe and orderly. But how much of our rights and liberties are we willing and able to give up in order to have that? And you are expressing a clear understanding of that tension. You express amongst yourselves some disagreement, which is very normal and appropriate. And you did it very nicely. And that's what we're trying for. And I like that you were able to try to also give us reasons for your thoughts, right? Don't give me your opinion. I want your arguments, right? I want your arguments that are substantiated with evidence and backup, in which you did provide us that. Just as you continue to learn and grow, and your young people going off to college soon, keep digging into this tension, right? Where is the right balance? And should we provide those people coming into our country at the borders under the 14th Amendment's persons language to give everybody those rights or not? And I don't know what the right answer is, and I look forward to you all exploring those in the years ahead. Thank you.
I agree with all of that. There was quite a breadth of evidence that was leveraged in support of your positions. Massachusetts State Constitution, Pennsylvania State Constitution. We heard from Jefferson and Hamilton, the Judiciary Act of 1789. Atkins. I mean, there's more. I didn't have time to write it down in time, but the crucial thing here isn't just that you know these cases and you mention them, but they were mentioned in the right spot, and with a line of summary of what it represents and how it fits into your argument. One of the elements of the question asks, under what circumstances could it be an unreasonable burden on the government? And rather just talking about that theoretically, you went to the Lincoln case, and that was an effective use of real world evidence, and that could have been a really wishy-washy kind of theoretical argument, but instead you guys went very concrete, and I think that was another one of many effective elements of your presentation.
Yes, well done to each of you. I enjoyed and appreciated your solid, in-depth overview of the history of on this question. And as my other two colleagues have mentioned, you grappled with and were able, I mean, all the knotty sort of tension-filled current issues and the challenges there, you recognize that, and some of the difficulties in coming to kind of quickly figured out solutions to that, but you were able to base your references to or your responses to a good in-depth knowledge of the subject. I was impressed you had references both, as Mr. Murphy said, state constitutions, some very current cases and situations, and so it was well done, and it's enjoyable to listen to folks like you, and I know you'll do well. Wish you the best here as well as down the road. So it was enjoyable to interact with you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I am going to put the judges in the breakout room now. And I think that you guys are done, right? Until the announcement. So congratulations to you and your teacher and your classmates for the hard work that you put in on this. I enjoyed listening to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. You're welcome. Bye-bye.